everyone, Nolar here, back on the 59Gaming channel. Today we're going to talk a little more PS5 news and some little tidbits coming out. But I'd like to formally introduce one of our new content creators on the console side of things. Hey Zinc, say hello to everybody.
Alright, 59Gaming crew, happy to be here.
Yeah, so Hey Zinc, if you guys don't know, he is a Dokkan content creator, but he's had a passion and a history for console and just general gaming in itself. And we applied and approached us about joining us, and I said, you know what, this looks great. So why don't we dive right into the two main topics we're going to talk about today, where there's an article that came out that said the PS5 has some small performance advantages over the Xbox Series X. So now Microsoft has to come out with a statement, to prove it, because look, everyone loves to talk specs. Some people utilize the spec sheet as a selling point over another one. Like, oh, this is better future proofing, it's got better advantages, yada yada yada. So for them to have the dick measuring contest with this, it's actually interesting to see a third party actually sit down and measure the difference. So here on paper, the difference between the Xbox and the PlayStation 5 is rather small, but Digital Foundry just basically showed that Sony's next-gen system is marginally superior in some of the multi-format face-offs. So again, we're talking just a few frames in Assassin's Creed Valhalla and some additional stuff in Dirt 5. But Microsoft has been pivoting, has been marketing their machine as the most powerful console ever made. But if you have third parties who are proving you otherwise, could you say it's like misleading marketing? Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
But just based on the results, quickly, what do you think? Hey Zinc, like, is this a big deal, or do people not care, or how does this approach you?
Well, just based on the results, I don't necessarily think people care. I think the issue is Microsoft need to go into sort of I don't want to say crisis management mode, but when you say all throughout launch, leading up to launch, we have the most powerful console ever made. We are releasing the most powerful console ever made. You release a spec sheet that has X number of teraflops more than your rival's console. You are building it up to make it seem like, on the multi-format front at least, the games that you can play on both consoles should maybe have a slight advantage on Xbox, but they shouldn't have a disadvantage. They shouldn't have any kind of disadvantage. And I think the issue that Microsoft have here is they basically, like you said there, they need to make sure they're not veering into that territory of misleading people or false advertising on things. Now again, it's not a huge difference. It by no means we're talking a couple of frames, maybe a few dropped frames or something like that. But again, if you've got something like Assassin's Creed Valhalla that you take on stage and basically say this is going to be the best that you can play on the Xbox, and it's not, I think that definitely is an issue that is worth addressing, and obviously Microsoft did have to come out and address it.
Yeah, I mean, as everyone knows, launch titles on the consoles, sure, they'll look better than the last gen, but they're not optimized whatsoever, right? They didn't have enough time with it. Like, you look at the end of the PlayStation 4 console games that came out, same with the Xbox One, like they look night and day different than when they launched. Those games, or any games that launched on that generation. So obviously the developers need more time to really dive in, and I potentially, maybe Xbox is right. Like, they do have the most powerful hardware. The developers need the time to get used to the coding their engine properly, getting the graphical settings right. So I'm not like dissuaded by it whatsoever, but it just looks really bad. Like, PR speaking wise, oh, we have the best performing console on the market, the most powerful one, and then a third party says, no, actually you don't. This other group has it. You have nothing.
Well, it's funny you mentioned optimization there, because obviously as a content creator, you might be experienced in this. I'm not sure, because I don't know what you're running for your home rig exactly, but a good example of this is something like Apple. Apple bring out iMacs and MacBooks, etc., and you can easily go out and buy a PC that's got better spec for less money. But because of the optimization, because Apple make everything talk to each other in the right way, there's no bottlenecks, they've not just crammed the most high-powered components into the one shell. People generally would say that you get better performance on an Apple device. Now, I'm not an Apple fanboy by any stretch of the imagination. I've got a PC at home, but I have seen lots of benchmarks and stuff like that say if you use an iMac, for example, to render footage for YouTube, you get better, faster results than you do off of a similarly spec'd PC, and sometimes a slightly better spec'd PC still won't give the same kind of performance. And I feel like that's possibly what's going on here, because leading up to the launch, there was lots and lots of developers that were coming out and saying things like the PlayStation 5's a dream to program for, it's a dream to work with, and you would have people have an argument say, well, obviously they're going to say that because they've been told to say that. If you look at the Xbox, it's got better specs, so obviously that's going to be the better one to work with. But little things like this tell me that the framework and stuff like that Sony's put in behind the scenes is paying dividends for them, because if these developers are able to get their games running better on lower hardware, then it's clearly something that's going on beneath the hood of the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Just to hammer away your point of, just because the specs aren't all that matter, right? In the end, a lot of Apple people or Android people, they just talk about the user experience, and for a good chunk of the audience for iPhones, iOS, all that stuff, they have a fantastic user experience where, yeah, the tablet or the phone itself may not stack up to another similarly priced Android competitor, but the experience is better. They've optimized it so the battery's better, even though it's smaller. Like, there's some magic with what Apple does with their things. So taking that concept and applying it here, it's going to take some time for the developers to get used to both architectures or both setups. So, I mean, first-party titles on PlayStations always look better because they're strictly only running that infrastructure, optimizing it for that console. So they know that they can squeeze that extra little performance and get the ins and outs perfectly for their game. So that's a whole other discussion we can talk about. But right now, I think we both said it looks like a little egg on Microsoft's face, and I'm sure for the most part, 95% of the people just don't care. As long as
we move on, and I never even really thought of that there. What you were saying there is another thing that you actually have to think of. When people are making games for the Xbox Series X, I mean, don't even think about PC or anything like that. They have to make sure that game's going to run on the Xbox Series S. So within Xbox's own framework, they've got another console that they have to have those games working on. Sony doesn't have that. I mean, the PlayStation and the PlayStation 5 Digital are the same console. The only difference is one doesn't have a drive. That's it. There's no difference between the two of them.
Right.
Whereas the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series S are fundamentally different consoles. They play the same games, but they don't have the same power beneath the hood. So I'm guessing, I mean, I don't know, because I don't know the full ins and outs of it, and I don't know the technicalities of it. They have to obviously make sure that they don't do anything to the Xbox version, the Xbox Series X version, sorry, that will mean it won't run correctly on the Xbox Series S. So there's further tinkering and there's further optimization that obviously has to go into those titles that doesn't necessarily happen on the PlayStation side of things. So again, that's another little thing for all we know that could be causing stuff like this to happen. It could just be the fact that you're usually bottlenecked by your slowest component,
right?
And I'd say that in this scenario, the slowest component is the Xbox Series S, because in essence, it's not allowed to hold back anything the Xbox Series X does. And the way it's been pitched, the Xbox Series X, apart from graphically, isn't allowed to do anything that the Series S does. It's supposed to provide you with the same experience. So in a way, the Xbox Series X potentially could be handicapped by the Series S going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we already seen that with Valhalla, right? Shout out to SkillUp. We'll have the editors put that up. But he did a review on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and he played it on both the Series S and the Series X. And Series X, smooth, buttery, 60 frames per second. But on the Series S, it's capped at 30 frames. And it just, the combat, for people who think, 30 frames per second is not a big deal at 60, you haven't played anything in 60 FPS before. It's buttery smooth. Combat feels better in that regard. So it's already here. We already see it just off the launch titles. And so they're going to have to do some, the power between the S and the X is different. And so the developers have to optimize for both versions. And right now it's just like, okay, well, dynamic frame rate, dynamic frame rate is not going to happen. With the X, we're going to cap it at 60, and then at the S, we have to cap it at 30, otherwise it's going to blow up the console. So yeah, we're already seeing that, and this is the strategy for Microsoft and PlayStation going out, right? Like as you said, the digital edition and the disc version for the PlayStation 5 is the same exact console, while the Series S and Series X is different, both on just the architecture. So it's gonna be interesting to go forward with this. But yeah,
I didn't know that about Valhalla. The thing is, going into the launch of the two consoles, the way it was positioned, the way it was promoted, the way that I picked it up was you will have the same experience on both of these consoles apart from graphics. On the Xbox Series X, you'll be playing at 1080p. On the Xbox Series X, you'll be playing at 4K or higher. But you should have the same gaming experience. To me, one being limited to 30 frames per second and 160, that's not the same gaming experience.
I agree.
Unlike 4K, if you don't have a 4K screen, you can't look at YouTube and see what the difference is. But YouTube does support 60 frames per second. If you go and look at, I'm using the PS4 and 5 as example. If you go and look at gameplay for Spider-Man on the PS4, you'll see it at 30 frames a second. If you go and look at gameplay for Spider-Man on the PS5, you'll see it at 60 frames per second. If you don't see the difference between the two of them, I don't mean this in an offensive way, there's something wrong with your eyes, because it's so buttery smooth. I mean, when you see 60 frames per second next to 30 frames per second, 30 frames per second just looks like it's running slow. I mean, if it's all you're used to, it looks fine, but as soon as you try a game in 60 frames per second, you 100% notice the difference between that and 30 frames a second. 100%.
Yes, I mean, it's the same thing when people go from just a regular 60 hertz monitor to a 144 hertz monitor that is supported. Huge difference, like big difference. So again, Microsoft, they had a strategy of segmenting their market between the S and the X, and they position the X as more powerful than the PlayStation 5, but so far early tests have disproven that. But look, what do you guys think about that? Let us know in the comments below. Is it a big deal to you? Is that something you really care about? But we'll go on to the next topic, the last one we have here, which is the PlayStation 5 sales versus the Xbox Series X sales, estimated figures. It looks like, because of, the launch was 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago at this point, at least for the North American side. I think in the UK, it opened up 2 weeks ago for the PlayStation 5.
The 19th of November, I got mine delivered.
Okay, so about 10 to 14 days ago, and we'll save that. Yeah. So right now, it just seems like the PlayStation 5 has defeated the Xbox Series X and the S when it came to launch day sales. So, again, this is more skewed to North America, because a lot of a good chunk of the articles. Sorry to Haze Inc. in the UK there, but the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S did well with 1.2 to 1.4 million units sold. On launch day, it was 780,000, while on PS5 is 1.2 million on launch day. And up here, 2.1 million to 2.5 million units of the PS5 have been sold so far in the first 2 days of launch. So it seems like the audience and the consumers have gravitated to the PlayStation 5. Any thoughts about that? Is this concerning, or is this something you basically expected, or is this better for Xbox than analysts had predicted?
Well, the Xbox is in a very strange state. I'll start with Sony first of all. Sony seem to be very focused on what they're doing. Sony want to sell consoles. Sony want people to buy the PS5. Sony want people to come over from the PS4 to the PS5, and they're making people's PS4 experience better on the PS5. And they're obviously going to boost the PS5 with new games, etc. Microsoft don't seem all that bothered about selling consoles. Microsoft seems more bothered about selling subscriptions to Xbox Game Pass, right? Which I find a bit strange, because obviously if you buy a new console, you want the developer to be invested in that console, because I personally have bought consoles before where developer support hasn't been what you expected. The Vita is something that springs to mind. It breaks my heart, but the Vita just didn't get the love from Sony that it should have got. And obviously, if Microsoft have got too many irons and too many different fires, just thinking about pushing out Game Pass, let's get it on mobile, let's get it on PC, let's get it on Switch if we can, because there's even been rumblings about trying to do things like that. It seems to be that their focus isn't where it should be, and right now that should be fully invested into the Xbox Series X. Or sorry, we'll just call it the Xbox Series, obviously, because there's two different SKUs. Okay. Now, speaking of the SKUs, that is actually something that really, I think, could have affected sales, and it kind of perplexes me. I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here, but when I went to get my PlayStation, the PlayStation pre-order went up on the UK about 3 days after the Xbox Series X. So because I'm someone who likes to keep note of how things are doing, I went on to look at the pre-orders for the Xbox Series X. And with the Series X, it sold out in I think it was about 30 minutes the Xbox Series X sold out in. The Xbox Series X went up for pre-order, Series S went up for pre-order at the exact same time, and when I went onto Amazon about 6 or 7 hours later, I could still pre-order that machine. So to me, that tells me one or two things. Either people aren't interested in an underpowered, and that's what I'm going to call it, an underpowered next-gen console, or people are confused at what it actually is. Because unlike people watching this video who are probably quite tech savvy and they know what they're talking about, you've got a lot of mums and dads that buy these things for their kids' Christmas, you know? And they might look at that and go, that's not the new Xbox, what is that? And I don't know whether that's going to hurt Microsoft in the long run, because as a tech savvy person, I don't know why I would pay £100 less to get an Xbox Series S then I could just pay £100 more and get the Sony digital version for a full powered console. So I don't know if straight off the bat fragmenting their audience is a good plan. And again, I don't know if that's possibly what's hurt the launch slightly. But people definitely seem to be adopting the PlayStation 5 a lot faster than the Xbox. And even if you look online, I don't see a lot of people talking about going to scalpers and let's not get too caught up in scalpers, but going to scalpers and thinking about possibly paying $900 for an Xbox Series X. All the stories you're seeing is people talking about scalpers charging $900 for a PlayStation 5. You're not seeing that sort of a same saturation on social media with, oh, this person's got 10 Xbox Series X's and he's selling them on Craigslist. All the stories are, this person's got 10 PlayStation 5s. So even the reseller market, I think, seems to be more focused on the PlayStation 5 than it does on the Xbox Series X, which just tells me that they've obviously got their finger on the pulse and they're reading the lay of the land as well, and they've realised that people seem to be more invested in the PlayStation this gen right from the off.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you. Like we've talked about many times before, there's two different philosophies on how they're approaching this generation. PlayStation 5 is strictly, we bring the games, you come to us, we give you the best gaming experience possible. And that's unique to us with our exclusives, with our controller, whatever you want to describe it. They say you want the best gaming experience, you come to us, and this is it. So you got to get it. While Xbox, like you said, they're more concerned about making sure the Game Pass, which is insane value. If you don't want to buy, if you on average spend, 2 games a month or 1 or 2 games a month on something new, it's still better value because most of those games are going to be on the Xbox Game Pass. So, I mean, I understand where Microsoft is, their viewpoint and what they're pushing, but again, that kind of leaves their hardware division kind of on the wayside. Yeah, of course, they would like to make money from there, but I think their focus is on the software subscription side, and so far, they're trying to get it everywhere. And if that's their goal, they're doing a very good job, because I don't see that. I know PlayStation is having rumors and mumbles of having something similar to the Game Pass, but it's not done into fruition yet, or whatever they have is, pales in comparison. But in terms of like getting the hardware, like you said, everything in terms of finding a scalper or anything along those lines, it's all been PlayStation focused.
So the strange thing is, but with Xbox Game Pass, I'll be honest, Xbox Game Pass is what put me off buying an Xbox. I've got to be honest, right? Because I have a Razer Kishi, the thing for your mobile phone, and it supports Xbox, right? And I was sitting and I was looking to pre-order an Xbox, and I thought to myself, well, I've got a good PC. I can use Xbox Game Pass, and I can play any of the games that are out on PC on my PC, with my Razer Kishi. If I've got Game Pass Ultimate, I can literally
Put it on your
play the
phone.
rest of the titles via the cloud. Why do I need to buy an Xbox? And as a consumer, if I'm asking myself that question, I feel like Microsoft have done something wrong, because what you should be asking yourself is, how quickly can I get this new console? Who have I got to go to buy this new console? Not, do I need this new console?
Right.
I just think when you enter a new product into the marketplace, the question that pops into someone's head shouldn't be, do I need this if I have these options available to me to still consume that content? And that's why I think that Xbox Game Pass can be both a blessing and a curse, you know, because like I say, why? If you've got a good PC, if you've got a mobile phone that's even halfway decent these days, you can literally buy a controller that's Xbox compatible and you're good to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Their philosophy is like they want Xbox games everywhere, not necessarily on their hardware, which is kind of counterproductive to, you know, what a console is. It's like, well, then you can only play the games here. You know what I mean? So they're pivoting away from the last 2-3 gens where they enter the marketplace of like, all right, we got the exclusives. You can only play this game on our hardware. So now, hey, we have the exclusive software. You just have to subscribe to play it wherever you want to play it. So again, it's a different mindset, but they might be playing the long game where that's the more profitable thing. But right now, it's growing pains, and hopefully they will be profitable with that concept. Because I love the concept of Game Pass. Because if I was, you know, my nephews are fairly young, I won't even get them a Game Pass. But if this matures to a point where they're like, you know, when they turn 7, 8 years old, instead of just buying them a straight game, I just, hey, here's a year subscription to Game Pass. So whatever you want to play, there you go. But
definitely, you want to do that because that saves you more money to summon and gachas. That's definitely what we want to do, Nola.
I know. Don't be like Uncle Nola, all right? Just don't be the degenerate that I am. Just be happy with what you're doing. So, anyways, thanks a lot, Hazink. He is the one who came up to me and thought these were some good talking points. I absolutely agree with him. You guys let us know down below in terms of the sales. I mean, if you've been hunting for a PlayStation 5, have you been able to find one? Or have the scalpers bought all your supply in whatever region you're in, or will you get lucky? And are you even looking at a Series X or Series S? Like, let us know, what is your experience? We'd want to hear it because you're our gaming audience. You can tell us what the pulse of the console side of things are right now. And let
us know as well, as an average gamer, does the concept of the Xbox Series S appeal to you? Does an underpowered or a less powered version of a next-gen console, does that appeal to you? Do you think that that's something that makes you want to jump in, or would you just rather save up the money to buy the full-powered version?
Agreed. So yeah, let us know in the comments below. If you like the video, hit that like button. If you're new here and want to have everything gaming related in terms of mobile gachas and PCs and consoles, hit that subscribe button. And Hazing, anything else?
No, like I say, just if you could give us some feedback on the topics that we mentioned at the end, that'd be great, because then we would obviously discuss that with you in future. It's been great to talk about this, and hopefully we can get some more positive gaming news from Xbox in the future, because obviously a strong Xbox leads to a strong PlayStation and vice versa, and we don't want console wars, we want both of them to do well.
Yes, for PlayStation to get better, Xbox has got to do well, and if they do well, PlayStation will on innovation. So competition is great overall, and it's good for us as consumers because we get the better deals. So anyways, guys, thanks a lot. We'll catch you all next time. Nolar and Hazing signing off for 59Gaming.